Apparently they can just bring your computer now.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
I'm incredibly techy, you could tell, right?
Yeah, my wife calls in like every device in the house starts ringing. It's maddening.
One of those just happened. Exactly right. Thank you, FaceTime. I can't even remember where we were.
We were sucking at stuff. That's where we were.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Welcome to the Active Marketer Podcast, where we talk about how to design, automate, and scale your business to the next level using sales and marketing automation. You can find out all the tips, tactics, and techniques you need to get more customers and sell more stuff over at theactivemarketer.com. Now, here's your host, Barry Moore.
Welcome to episode 26 of the Active Marketer Podcast. I'm your host, Barry Moore. Now, usually I would go into a few things like what's happening in the Shameless Social Proof segment, but this week's episode is gold. It's a masterclass from beginning to end. It's a little bit longer than the normal episodes, but I didn't want to edit anything out. I don't want you to miss any of the value in this one. So we're going to jump straight into it. This week's episode is a webinar masterclass with Taki from Coach Marketing Machine. We're going to talk about how you get people to sign up, show up, pay up, and how you follow up using marketing automation whenever you're running a webinar. So let's jump straight into the great content with Taki. All right, I'd like to welcome to the show Taki. Taki, welcome.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. What an honor. Can't wait to talk about automation and all that good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited about having you on the show because one thing you said to me, or I heard at an event, one of your coaching seminars, was it always sticks with me is framework before work. So if you're going to do
100%.
If you're going to do anything, make sure you've got a framework for it, and you are the killer king of frameworks. So I thought we could talk about today a little bit about frameworks for running webinars, and how you can set yourself up with a nice webinar funnel, give yourself the best chance of success, the listeners out there the best chance of success when they go to run a webinar. Sound good?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Cool. So maybe we start out, what kind of elements do you need to include in a webinar funnel?
Yeah, so, we can talk about, the specific pages and stuff like that in a second. But if you just break down a good webinar funnel into 4 steps, it's really straightforward. It's kind of applied common sense. There are 4 separate little campaigns that we're going to run. We're going to need a sign-up campaign, which is how do we get people to register? So basically, it goes sign up, show up, pay up, follow up. Right.
Beautiful.
So sign up is how do we get people to register? Show up is once somebody's registered, what can we do to, number 1, increase the likelihood that they show up, but number 2, increase the likelihood that they show up predisposed, pre-screened, pre-filtered, et cetera, to kind of sign up and give you money, cool. Moving them from, never heard of you to, wow, this looks amazing. So there's sign up, show up, which is, around attendance and positioning. There's pay up, which is, all of the kind of the structure of the webinar itself, which happy to go to if you want to. It's not automation per se, but it's another great, really handy framework. And then there's follow-up afterwards, which is, what do we do after the webinar to make sure that we kind of maximize our sales and, answer people's objections, etc.
Brilliant. All right. So why don't we, let's just dive in, shall we? So what goes into that sign-up sequence?
Well, it's really straightforward. Hey, the first thing we need is we need a great title and a topic. So we're going to run a webinar. We obviously want to do something that's juicy and attractive to people. We're going to need a landing page which promotes it. We'll talk about that in a second, and then a way to drive traffic to that landing page. So effectively, that's usually either email or paid traffic to Facebook is one of the 2 most obvious ones. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
So let's talk about finding a great title and topic. The easiest way to do that is to figure out what is kind of most pressing, urgent, and emotional for your target market. So if we pick a topic like in your case, marketing automation, what we want to do is we want to go deep in kind of I would call it their secret psychology. In other words, what are the hidden motivations and the real emotional drivers behind what's making people do what they do around your topic. So the easiest framework I've got for that is something called the 4 forces. It may well have been something that we talked about. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was something we talked about at that event together. If you just grab a blank piece of paper, Barry, and divide it into 4 quadrants. So, we've got a line down the middle and a line horizontally across the center.
Yep.
And what we're going to do is we're going to map customer hot buttons. And so this is less about automation, but more about strategy. And if we get the strategy right, the automation kind of works itself. So the horizontal line that goes across the middle, on the left-hand side of that, if you just kind of mark the left-hand end as away, some people are motivated kind of away from pain. Okay. And the right-hand side, let's call that toward. People are motivated towards what they do want, right?
Yep.
The vertical, up the very top, we're going to write the word immediate. So that's kind of what's going on right now.
Yep.
Some of the motivations are much more pressing and urgent. And then there are imagined, which are in the future.
Right.
So if you go away, towards, immediate, and imagine, what that does is it gives us kind of 4 different places, 4 different hot buttons to press when it comes to both the copy on the landing page, but also on the emails or the Facebook ads. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's just break this down a little bit. If you think about most people being motivated away from, so we're going to go heavy on the left-hand side of this kind of little model here. If they're motivated away from immediate, we'd call that frustrations. So what we want to do is we want to have at least 3 big frustrations around a set topic that we can market to, yeah?
Cool.
If you think about away from motivations that are a little bit more, a little bit further into the future, let's call those fears. If you can hear me scribbling, I'm drawing it as we speak. On the right-hand side, yeah, exactly. On the right-hand side, we've got the exact opposite. So instead of a frustration, if something's right now and it's a towards, it's a want. And then down the bottom right-hand side, we've got aspiration. This is something that they want to move towards in the future. So it's not right now, but it's something kind of we aspire to. Yeah?
Yep.
So, for example, if we were going to run a webinar around marketing automation, your topic, then before we do anything, we need to come up with a topic and a title, some landing page copy and some email copy. And this tool here, this kind of framework called the 4 Forces, is how I do it. So if you want, we could even have a quick play with it now.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right. So, by the way, this is your interview, not mine. I'm really happy to talk about whatever you want.
No, man. I'm soaking it in, brother. Soaking it in.
All right. Cool. Okay, that's great. So let's start with frustrations. If you think about marketing automation, mate, it's like if somebody doesn't have the sorts of work that you do, if they don't have campaigns that are automated using a smart tool, what are kind of 2 or 3 big frustrations that they might be feeling?
They're frustrated by the tech. They don't understand it. It's taking.
So let's call that overwhelm.
Overwhelm. Cool.
Yeah. So they're kind of completely overwhelmed. It's taking up heaps of time, and they're frustrated by it. Great. What's another frustration? If they don't have marketing automation, what else might be happening in their biz?
They're not converting enough customers. They're not following up properly. They're missing out on business.
Perfect. They're not following up and they're not converting. Great. If there was a third?
Just too much time. So all this tech just takes way too much time. Not only do I not understand it, but it's killing all my productive time as well.
Yeah, perfect. Tangled and no time. Beautiful. So let's say I'm in that situation. By the way, we've just kind of ticked off top left box, which is great. So I'm overwhelmed. It's taking way too much time. I'm kind of tangled up in the technology. And as a result, these campaigns aren't working for me and I'm not converting like I want. What's the long-term frustration? Long-term fear. If all of those things happen, what's the negative consequence at the end of that road?
Missing out on business. I can't take my business to the next level. Like just getting bogged down in follow up in technology instead of being able to scale my business to the next level.
Great. So I miss out, I'm bogged down, and I stay small. Awesome. Okay. Well, that's the hardest work we're going to have to do all podcast now, I promise.
Right, cool. Let's everybody go home.
Yeah, let's everyone go home. So here's what happens next. We've got the whole left-hand side. We've got some fears and some frustrations. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to figure out the wants and aspirations. And all we're going to do is we're going to take whatever we wrote on the left and turn it inside out onto the right. So if on the left-hand side, one of my frustrations is I feel overwhelmed by all the technology, what do I want instead?
I just want it done for me. I just want it handled.
Yeah, I want it done. Handled. Perfect. Good. Instead of it taking heaps and heaps of my time, what do I want instead?
More free time to work with my customers.
More free time to work with my customers. Perfect. All right. And instead of a funnel that is underperforming and not converting, what do I want? I guess I want high conversions.
Yeah, high conversions, bringing me qualified leads 24/7.
Perfect. Qualified leads 24 times 7. Beautiful. Okay, so we've done the wants now. Aspirations down the bottom. I'm going to miss out. The fear was I'll miss out. I'm bogged down, and I stay small. Instead of miss out, we cash in. Instead of bogged down, we got momentum. And instead of staying small, I guess we can scale it up, right?
Exactly.
All right. So cool, man. So here's what we've got. Now we've got all of the the content fodder we need to A, build a great landing page. B, write all our email sequences, which we'll talk about kind of the mechanics of in a sec. And C, we've actually got pretty much everything we know in terms of what content should I put in this webinar to make it really convert well.
Yep. Cool.
Cool?
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of a content framework that will give us, what to pour into the automation. Sometimes when we talk automation, we're really focused on the, on the mechanic. But if we don't have some copy and some strategy around what to put into the mechanic, then it's a great tool kind of looking for some purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you're not adding value, there's really not a whole lot of point.
Exactly right. So we've got in our sign-up campaign, it looks like this. We've got a landing page with some copy based on the hot buttons we've just identified. We've got, if it's an email-based campaign, we've got 4 emails that we're going to send. A problem email, a promise email, and a proof email, and then finally a little reminder. Do you want to talk about dates and schedules and stuff like that, like when to send them?
Yeah, let's go.
So
problem, promise, proof, and reminder.
Yeah. So imagine you're going to send 4 emails to promote this webinar.
Yep.
When do we do our webinar? I usually run mine on Thursdays. It's been either Wednesday or Thursday. Let's pick Thursday, just to keep it nice and simple and consistent. So if you looked at a month to a page calendar, and you looked at whatever the third week is, whatever that Thursday is. Yep. I'll just look at my calendar right now. In fact, let's just do that. So that gives us the 18th for this month.
Okay.
So the 18th would be the webinar. Then we're going to send some promo emails, 1, 2, 3, and then a reminder. So if you've got lots of stuff on in your calendar, you're promoting lots of different things, and you've got heaps of moving parts, then just do a really short sequence. Literally, the week of the webinar, we can send it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the reminder on Thursday, run the webinar on Thursday, and everybody wins. Because that's a nice little short campaign that we can do. Yep. And so typically I do problem email, then a promise email, then a proof email, and then a reminder. If your calendar isn't nearly as jammed, if you've got heaps of room and you're not in that frequent contact with your list, then let's stretch out the campaign a little bit longer. And so we'll go the week before the webinar on a Tuesday, we'll go email 1. That same week, the week before, we're going to go Thursday, we'll send email 2. The Tuesday of the week of the webinar, in this case the 16th, we'll send our proof email, and then our reminder will go out on the Wednesday, which is the 17th for the webinar the next day. Does that make sense?
Yep, cool. So you got basically just
2 different options depending on how much is going on in your world.
Yeah, a week and a half or a few days.
Or 3 or 4 days, exactly right. Cool. So that's kind of our sign-up campaign basics. The only other kind of obvious tweak to make to your sign-up campaign is you can do what we've just done, which is create a really great lead magnet, email your whole list about getting this free thing, and when they click the link to get it, your System Active Campaign or Entreport or Infusionsoft, whatever you use, emails it to them. They click the link and it lands them on a thank you page, which is, hey, thanks so much. I'll email it to you in the next few minutes. It's awesome because of XYZ. I'm imagining this is a video.
Yep.
It's awesome because of XYZ. Meanwhile, while you're here, you might like our my webinar.
Cool.
And basically half the video is about the cool thing they've just done, and half the video is about the webinar that's coming up, and a whole bunch of your dudes will go, thanks for the cool free thing, and register in for your webinar.
Lovely.
How are we doing so far?
Barry, that's great. This is gold, Taki gold. So have you found that one of those 2, either the kind of the week and a half or the 4 shorter long ones works better, or
yeah, it's actually really interesting. Here's what I found. The long sequence tends to get more registrations.
Yeah. But
your show up rate seems to be better when I do the short. So they kind of balance each other out.
Yeah. Cool.
And so literally my discussion about which one should I do when really comes down to how much else is already going on in your world.
Yeah.
And if people tend to be pretty forgiving about event-based promotional emails because they know that, you're sure there's a lot of emails right now, but as soon as the event's done, it's going to die back down and I'm all good. So
yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think you don't want to give them too much time or it just kind of drops out of their short-term memory and forget about it.
Yeah. especially if you're promoting it on Facebook. So here's one of the interesting things we found on Facebook.
Yeah.
I thought this is when I first got started. With Facebook ads, it was like, okay, so what works with email is 10 days. Okay, let's do that with Facebook. Complete disaster. Heaps of registrations, like show up rate, like through the floor. Oh crap! And so now when we're promoting a live webinar on Facebook, we kind of promote it for the 48 hours before the webinar.
Yeah.
Nobody's really on Facebook kind of there to plan their life, right? They're there to escape it. And little tip that's been really handy for us is if you happen to be running an automated webinar and you're driving traffic to it from Facebook, then instead of having like a webinar every Tuesday or every Wednesday or whatever, have used Stuff Seminar or some kind of automated platform, but have the webinar start every 20 minutes.
Right.
And so I can click on the ad, land on a webinar page for the webinar that happens to be starting pretty much right now. I'll stick around and I'll watch the thing live.
Cool.
And then your show up rate is 95% plus, which is kind of rad.
And you could even put that behind your lead magnet. So if someone's on your website, they download your lead magnet whenever that happens to be, that they land on that thank you page, and then the webinar starts 20 minutes later or 10 minutes later, or whatever.
See, that's what I love about you, Barry. You're always next leveling it. That's awesome.
I'm an ideas man, Taki.
Yeah, you totally are. Straight to the pool room with that one. That's great.
Straight
totally.
to the pool room.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right away. That's handy. So that's really nice, right? So if we just go big picture, what are we about? We're about to kind of run a webinar that converts lots of people into buyers or trials of your software or whatever your service is.
Yeah.
And so we're going to break the campaign up into sign up, how do we get them to register? Show up, which we'll talk about next. How do we get them to actually attend? And then what do we do on the webinar? And then how do we slice and dice? How do we treat different people differently after the webinar? So what do you reckon?
Yeah.
Talk about show up?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So depending on when people register for the event, for your webinar, if you're doing a short campaign, it might be a couple of days. If you're doing that long campaign, it could be like a week or so. And so what we want to do is we've got an opportunity now to make people not just more likely to show up, but more likely it's going to think the way you think and think the way you want them to think.
Yeah.
So if I just kind of break down a typical show up campaign, it looks like a couple of different things. Number one, there's usually a series of email-based reminders. If you're doing the long campaign, maybe it's, there's something 7 days before, 5 days before, 3 days before, 2 days before, the day before,
Yep.
3 hours, an hour, and we're starting now. That's a lot of emails depending on when somebody registered. But, if every email is kind of interesting, a little bit quirky, some personality, and have some value, then I'm totally going to read those. And I'm going to forgive the frequency of the email because I know that once the webinar's done, the emails will stop too.
And you're adding a little nugget of value in each one of those. Yeah. It's not just
I try to do two things. I try to add some value, which we'll talk about in a mo, but also some personality. I want people to kind of get a sense that I'm just a normal dude. And so one of my favorite emails is most of my webinars I run at 8 a.m. Sydney time.
Yep.
And so I've got an email that usually goes out 3 hours before the webinar, which in my time zone would be 5 a.m. Oh, I don't know about you, mate, but I'm not at my best at 5, and often I'm asleep, frankly. What are you like at 5? Are you fresh?
I am trying to convince the dog that she doesn't really need to go out at 5.
It's actually funny. Just recently, I've started going to CrossFit, and I'm in a 5:30 session, so 5 o'clock 3 days a week at least I'm up. But previously I was comatose. Is what normal people are doing at 5, right? So there's an email that goes out at 5 a.m. and it's got no value, but frankly it's a reminder, but it's got a bit of personality.
Yep.
And it says something like, "Hey Barry, guess what? It worked. My alarm. Actually, sorry, it's 5 o'clock here in Sydney right now. It's 5 o'clock, and I'm still asleep. Because the webinar is important to both of us, I set this little reminder up to let you know that we kick off in just under 3 hours time. Can't wait to see you there. Here's the link. Here's what we're going to cover. Da 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 da. By the way, I've got an alarm set to wake me up in an hour or so, and once I get up and have breakfast, I'll fire out the webinar and see you there soon. So it's just a friendly I'm asleep thing. Cool. About 2 hours later, an hour before the webinar starts, there's another email that says, "Hey Barry, guess what? It worked. My alarm woke me up on time. I'm feeling fresh. Can't wait to start up the webinar with you. Here's the link again. I'm going to shoot off right now to Nourish, my local cafe here in Avalon, where I live. I'm going to get my favorite smoothie, which means you're in for a great webinar. Can't wait to see you soon." It's like a little bit of personality, no value, but some connection. Yeah.
Cool.
In terms of what else to do in your show up campaign, well, we've talked about personality in a countdown sequence. How about some value, right? So if you have 2 or 3 videos, short videos, which teach people some of the content, kind of teaches great stuff and teases some of the content you're going to show in your webinar. If they like the content, then they're going to be much more likely to kind of show up live to get the rest.
Yeah. So you want to get them frothing about what they're going to learn. Yep.
Yeah, completely. But it just can't be hey, I just wanted to tell you the webinar's going to be amazing. You're going to teach something and then tell them, by the way, we're going to go deeper into this on the webinar. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
The other piece which we've found really handy is to create a curiosity handout. Imagine like a PDF handout for your webinar that people can kind of fill in the blanks on live. Yep. That shows people how great the webinar is going to be, but leaves a whole lot of incomplete open loops. Like, for example, your webinar might have a handout which says, the number one biggest mistake that almost everybody makes when trying to automate their marketing, and then in brackets, cost them hours, waste a small fortune, and fails miserably almost every single time is, and then a blank.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that's that sort of an idea. If you think about a reminder sequence, a curiosity handout, and maybe some short content and teaser videos, you're in pretty good shape for your show up.
Yeah, I've seen lead pages use that as a. They must be doing it to like the people who registered and didn't show up. So if you're one of those people that registered and didn't show up, they say, hey, the webinar was great last night. Replays in 24 hours. Here's the notes from the webinar. And it's exactly that, like exactly what you said. The biggest thing you need to think about with the landing page is fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
totally. So actually, there's one other thing that we did that was so easy and, it took almost no effort. For someone like you, it would take kind of even less effort because you're really good at this stuff. Was sending people a text message reminder half an hour before the webinar started with a, hey, Barry, Taki here, about to fire out the webinar, see you on in 30 minutes, check your email for the link.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, that increased our show-up rate 10% just from a text message, which was kind of pretty awesome.
Yeah, nice.
So we talked about sign-up and show-up. How are we going so far, Barry? Is this kind of helpful-ish?
I'm loving it, brother. I'm loving it. I'm sure all the listeners are as well.
Okay, well, that's important to me. Thanks, listeners, for loving it. Please send love letters and thank you notes to Barry, and any hate mail, just kind of write it and burn it. We don't need that kind of aggression.
That's right. Send the love letters to Taki. You can send the hate mail to me. How's that?
Totally. That sounds like a great deal, brother. So the next campaign is pay up, which is about the webinar itself, and after that comes follow up. I know that this is a marketing automation kind of theme show. Do you want to talk a little bit about the webinar, or do you just want to jump straight into the follow up? How do you want to play this? No,
let's talk about the webinar. I know I've seen you talk about it before, and I think one of the things that most people struggle with when they're getting started is that transition from I've got this webinar, I'm providing value to everyone, I'm teaching them stuff, I'm helping them out, and then it's that what they perceive is that switching gears to selling at the end.
And it's awkward for so many people.
Yeah, so I know you're great at that, so maybe you could share some of your secrets there.
Yeah, totally. That's great. So you're right. I think that one of the biggest challenges we have, particularly, is like anyone who's actually likes people and wants to help, and your business isn't just about money, but it's about making a difference. One of the big challenges we've got is that we typically run webinars which are really high on. We'd perceive them as high value, certainly high content, and we teach so much stuff that at the end people go, wow, that was amazing, thank you so much. I'm just going to go and implement this for a little while, and it's been great, goodbye. And so they say thanks, but they don't buy anything or sign up for everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I was, 9 or 8 or something like that, I was walking through Darling Harbour holding my dad's hand, and we walked past one of those buskers at Darling Harbour who'd got this huge crowd of people like cheering and hooting and hollering for him, and he kind of whipped the crowd into a frenzy, and he did his kind of final act, like probably juggling a small child and a chainsaw or something like that. And at the end, people were cheering, and I just heard him yell out, "Don't clap, throw money."
Yeah.
And that's what happens with a lot of our webinars, right? We get claps, but we don't get clients.
Ta-da.
So yeah, exactly. It's brilliant. So let's just talk about what's really going on in that webinar, because it's motivated with good reason. Like, most people want to deliver a great webinar that really, really helps people. And so I just want to kind of talk to that for a second, and then happy to switch gears and talk about how better to structure a webinar so that the transition is really smooth.
Brilliant.
But if you're a smart dude. I'm sure it happens to you as well. Somebody or a friend of a friend or a family member or whatever goes, hey, I've heard, seen some of the good stuff you're doing. I'd really love to learn more. Could I take you out for coffee and pick your brains, or take you out for lunch and kind of pick your brains a little bit?
Yep.
And by the way, pick my brains. It's just such an appealing proposition. Please,
That's right.
Anyway, so you agree, and they take you out for coffee, and it's usually lousy, or lunch, and it's not that great, and you end up paying or whatever. But let's say you spend an hour with your friend, and you give them, they're a good dude, and you want to help, so you just give them, a whole bunch of the knowledge and skill that's in your brain. You've got years of experience. You just go, hey, you need to do this, and then you do that, and you teach them. You sign up, and you show up, and you pay up, and you follow up, and you just kind of teach them all the stuff. And they get their mind blown because you're really good at your stuff, and you help them out of stack. And at the end, they go, thank you so much. That was amazing. I'm really grateful for your help. Thank you so much. And then they go off, and you're walking back to the car, and you go, wow, how much value did I just give Bob?
Yep. Dropping value bombs left, right, and center. We've all been there, I think.
Yeah, you drop value bombs left, right, and center, and everything's cool. And then you go, well, what do you reckon Bob's really going to do with that? Like, if we're honest about it, probably not very much at all, maybe nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if Bob doesn't do anything with it, then he's not going to get any results from it. And if he's not going to get any results from it, did we really give Bob any value at all? Well, I'd argue that we didn't give Bob value because we certainly didn't give him any results. We gave him content, but that's not enough.
Yeah, for sure. So if no one's going to implement, you might as well not have the conversation in the first place. So
why don't we just enjoy the coffee and call it coffee?
Yeah.
So if we didn't change his life, if he didn't implement anything, then nothing really happened other than an exchange of coffee for content. So here's the thing. If information doesn't change people's lives, and we've just kind of proved that to be the case with our coffee story, then having a webinar that is straight content isn't actually valuable at all. It's just a data transfer. It makes you feel important. It makes them feel, excited. But if no transformation happens, then all we've done is pass the information across. So I think about a webinar as it's a vehicle to help create a transformation, a change from, I used to do it like this and now I'm going to do it like that. Yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, sorry, after you.
No, I was just going to say, you're there to take them on a journey from A to B, from where they are to where they want to be. So,
yeah, exactly right. And if all you do is kind of you talk about the journey, but they don't actually take the first step, then as good as our content was, as good as my content was, I've failed. So what we want to do instead is we want to help make the webinar, actually transformational. For that to happen, they've got to make some decisions along the way. And so, I just want people to kind of rethink the value idea behind a webinar. It's going to be incredibly high value, but it's going to be a different kind of value. I want to give people the kind of value that puts them in a position that they're able to make a great decision for themselves and for their future, whether it involves me or not. But at the end of a webinar, I want people to do something different. Otherwise, we've tickled each other's ears, and that just gets creepy after a few seconds. It's nice at first, and then it's like, stop it. Let's just stop tickling each other's ears.
Yeah.
So this feels like the longest answer to a really simple question I've ever given. I'd love to publicly apologize for that, Barry. You asked me,
stop tickling my ears.
I'm going to stop tickling your ears, damn it. How do we make the transition from kind of teaching to invitation really easy, kind of really worthwhile and flow? And so I think the secret is, instead of teaching people stuff and then trying to sell them stuff, what if the whole webinar from minute 1 to minute 60 was content? The whole thing taught and the whole thing sold.
Yeah.
What that means is we've got to be much more deliberate about what content we choose to teach and how we choose to teach it, because it wants to, every piece of content wants to, number one, further the sale. In other words, make people more likely to do the thing you want them to do at the end. Number two, to be perceived as valuable content. In other words, we're going to teach great stuff. We're going to do a why stack at the start and actually give people value. Number three, it's got to keep people engaged. It's got to have good stories, or maybe drawing on your iPad, or a question, or a poll, or something that keeps us engaged. And number four, that it gives us the chance to show proof that that the argument you're making is actually true and your stuff works.
Cool.
That way, we teach great content that doesn't just tickle ears, but has people go, you know what, that was amazing, but I want more. And that's where our pay up piece really rocks. Yeah.
So So you're kind of intersprinkling the sales message throughout rather than just waiting to the end and going, yeah, blah, 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 and buy my stuff.
Correct. Yeah, your every piece of content is great from a learning point of view, and what it really does is it teaches us what to want.
And I'm assuming addresses objections that you think they might have as well.
Yeah, completely. In fact, one of the things that we do is make a list of people's objections, people's questions, and any alternatives that they could use instead of your stuff.
Yep.
As well as what we want them to believe about you, your product, and themselves. So that's like 6 lists. What do we want them to believe about you? Yep. You're an incredibly good-looking gentleman, and your podcast is awesome. What do we want them to believe about themselves?
And I have very ticklish ears.
Yeah, completely. We all do if you get it just right. What do we want them to believe about your product? Well, that it's simple, that they can do it, that it gets them results. What do you want them to believe about themselves? Well, probably that even though they've tried a bazillion things before, that this thing is the sort of thing that they can get results with, and it'll work for them, and that it's worked for other people just like them.
Yeah.
So sorry, after you.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, absolutely.
So on the belief side of things, it's what do we want them to believe about themselves, about your product, and about you? And then on the kind of objection handling, what are the objections? What are the questions that they'll have, and what alternatives do I need to neutralize? And if you're masterful, you'll do all 6 things, and if you're not, you'll just do a great job of teaching good stuff and have people hopefully want your stuff anyway. Yeah,
right.
That's kind of one component of a really good pay-up campaign. And if people want to find out more, I'm sure they can. There's webinar courses out there. If you just Google my name and the word webinar, you'll find a video where I kind of talk in depth about this stuff, and that'd be helpful too. Shall we just talk about the follow-up campaign?
Yep. So that's cool. So yeah, that other psychology of selling could be a whole different thing, and I know you're really great at that. So we'll put some links into the show notes about where people can find that webinar, so they can really fine-tune their sales message throughout the webinar and get their mind right about how they sell. So let's jump into that follow-up sequence.
All right. So the beautiful thing about marketing automation, mate, is it allows you to say the right thing to the right people at the right time in the right way.
You've been reading my marketing material, haven't you, Taki?
I actually haven't, but if that's what you're saying exactly the right stuff, because that's what it's all about, right? Yep. Right message, right person, right time, right way, then it's perfect. And if that's what you're saying, then you should totally buy everything Barry has to sell, because he's bang on the money. So at the end of a webinar, if you just go, well, who are the right people? If we just kind of slice and dice our all the people who have registered into 4 buckets, then it's going to be pretty easy to know what to say as soon as we identify who the 4 groups are. So we've got some people who didn't show up to the webinar at all. We call them no-shows.
Yep.
We've got people who came on the webinar, stayed all the way through, saw your offer and thought that was amazing, and they've bought. So they're your buyers. That's kind of group number 2. So we've got no-shows and we've got buyers. We've got people who came onto the webinar, stayed for a little bit, and then bailed early. I call them bailed early. So that's our 3rd group. We don't want to follow them up a certain way. And they've got some people who came onto the webinar, watched all the way through, and for whatever reason now, either the message wasn't right for them, or we missed something, or whatever. But they stayed on. They watched the whole thing, but they just didn't buy. So that gives us like 4 different categories of people to follow up. And so what you and I might do right now, if you want to, Barry, is just kind of think through each of those 4 categories. What's the kind of the logical focus for each of them? Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, so let's say I'm on the webinar and I love it and I buy your stuff. Well, we're just going to look after those people like amazing new clients and give them all the love in the world, right?
Straight into some onboarding and some love. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, straight into some onboarding and some love, 100%. If I come onto the webinar, if I register for the webinar but I don't show up, what feels like a logical offer for them?
Well, we want to get them back. They can watch the replay. Here's some of the notes from the show. Here's what you missed, and here's what some people said about it. If you've got time to gather social proof. Yeah, exactly right. So come onto a replay. In other words, the video is going to be up in 24 hours time, or we're going to do an encore. You run the webinar again. So our goal for the no-shows is to get them to kind of participate in the webinar. Absolutely. And your here's the note strategy, or here's a quick highlight video strategy is a really nice one for that. Yeah, cool.
If they came on to the webinar and they bailed early, something came up and they had to leave, or they just didn't think it was that great, well, saying come and watch the webinar again may or may not be the best match. Giving them, like if I've come onto the webinar, but I left early, then either giving me a chance to watch the video and scrub forward to the part that I most wanted could be handy.
Yeah.
Or you could just do a quick summary of the webinar and just make your offer.
Yeah, very cool.
Like a highlight reel / offer is a really nice offer for those guys.
Nice.
And if I came onto the webinar and I saw the whole thing, right all the way through, but I didn't offer it, I didn't take up the offer, then, assuming, it's either got to be that I'm just totally not interested, or I'm interested, but I've got some challenges, concerns, questions.
Right.
And so if you built if you kind of figure out what the top 3 objections might be, and just made a quick little video where you teach, effectively teach the objection away. If the objection is, I'm not techie enough to do this, and so you create a little video about how it's actually not about being techie, it's about understanding the strategy and having someone techie to do it for you.
Exactly.
And that's video number 1. Then you can kind of give people a 3 or 4 video series which has a little bit of content that addresses an objection, and then you just kind of restate the offer, or maybe you even bonus stack a little bit. Then we've got 4 different campaigns for 4 different groups, and we're actually giving people exactly what they need at their phase, rather than kind of trying to blanket broadcast everybody with stuff that may or may not be right for them.
Yeah, nice. And if you really believe in your product, you're doing those people a favor, right? So it's not like you're pestering them.
Dude, you're totally not.
Yeah.
Like if I go, that looked amazing, but I've got some questions, and you come back and answer my questions, then you're being really helpful. And that sort of thing should be encouraged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love your work.
So I think, if you summarize a webinar campaign up into those 4, you sign up, show up, pay up, follow up. Obviously, we can obsess and get better and better and better at all of them. Obviously the payout one is really, really fun. And but frankly, just by doing a tiny tweak to each of these, this is kind of how I got excited about it. The first time I kind of thought about it in these 4 different boxes, and now if I can change a couple of things in my show up campaign to get 10% more people show up on my webinar, holy mackerel, that's amazing. If I can tweak my webinar registration page and my promo emails and kind of get 20% more people to register, if I can change the way I make my offer and actually add some follow-up, then you can take a webinar, like I've done the math, you can take a webinar from making you, I don't know, like 1 sale at $1,000 to 39 sales just by making 3 or 4 small tweaks, and it multiplies across. So it's totally worth obsessing about the 4 campaigns and making them work.
Yeah, absolutely. And split testing is always a great idea, but little triggers, little levers move big boulders, as they say. So, yeah, fantastic. And I know you've been at it for a long time, and you've learned all the hard lessons, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing them with all the listeners. Just before we jump off, I know I don't want to take too much of your time here, but what are the common mistakes you see some people making when they start out on that webinar journey?
Oh, dude. There's some biggies. I think the biggest one, it's not one I talk about a lot, but the biggest one is just putting so much pressure on themselves to get it right first time. And so I just say, let's just agree right now that if you're going to do a webinar the very first time, you're actually going to run 3 webinars. And by the time you've done number 3, you're going to have one that's been really, really successful, and either 3 that are successful, or 2 that are successful, or at least 1. And I had a guy who was just phobic. Hey, Barry, like really nervous about this thing. And so I said, so here's the deal. Let's just set the bar really low so you can't possibly screw this up. We're going to do 3 webinars. Here's my goal for the first one, that you click start on the webinar button, and that the thing runs and the technology sort of works. And that's your first goal. I don't care what you say, how many people show up, even if it's like you and your cat. That's just a win, right? So goal number 1 is a webinar where the technology actually works.
That is always a win. Yep.
That's a win, right?
Yeah,
and I'm sure you've had times where you run them and it doesn't. So, that's a win. Webinar number 2 for him was I want you to run a webinar where the technology works and you teach them really great stuff.
Yeah, very cool.
Webinar number 3 is I want you to run a webinar. Technology works, you teach great stuff, and at the end you make an offer that people respond to. And if you can just take the pressure off yourself. Like if you're completely phobic, just like turn the computer, turn the thing on, run a webinar to your dog or your cat or your wife or husband, and just kind of go to a different room and talk to each other. At least that way you kind of reduced some of the fear. I know it's getting a little silly, but that's like so many of the things we let so many little things stop us just because we haven't made the game easy to win.
Yeah, that got a great piece of advice, and unfortunately, I can't remember where it came from. But I'm kind of a perfectionist myself. I'm kind of a detail person, and I'm normally good at stuff when I try it. And if I, in the past, if I wasn't, I kind of gave up pretty quickly. But the piece of advice was, if you want to get good at something, get comfortable with the idea of sucking at it for a little while first, right?
Yeah.
So, don't
totally. And so, like, if you make the goal to fail, then when you screw up, you're actually successful.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, but it's totally true.
For sure. And if you embrace being shitty at something for a little while, it's a lot easier to get a lot better a lot quicker.
Totally. So I'm in. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
My phone just started to ring through my computer, which was amazing because I thought my phone was turned off. I don't know how that worked, but magic. Apparently, they can just ring your computer now.
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
You can tell. I'm incredibly techy. You can tell, right?
Yeah, my wife calls in, like, every device in the house starts ringing. It's maddening.
One of those just happened. Exactly right. Thank you, FaceTime. I can't even remember where we were.
We were sucking at stuff. That's where we were.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I just started at CrossFit, and I come dead last 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Like, literally last. And I'm just going to embrace the fact that I'm going to suck for ages. And moving and lifting stuff and getting, more mobile is totally worth the suckiness. And like, maybe the first couple of times I had a little bit of ego that everyone else was like, you're doing handstand push-ups, and I was like barely doing a push-up. But I'm just kind of used to that now. And exactly, just embrace your suckiness, and you get. If you don't have any ego about it, you're just fine.
And it's never going to be as bad as you think. You build it up in your mind. It's never as bad as it's going to be. So just get out there and suck. That's my advice to everybody. Get out there and suck.
Yeah, sponsor this message of hope.
This message of suckiness.
Get out there and suck.
Cool. All right, Taki. Well, that was gold from start to finish. I really do appreciate it. I know you're the king of frameworks, and people can find out all about how to run a really successful webinar from a selling and psychology point of view over at Coach Marketing Machine. Is that the best place for them to find you? Yeah, exactly right. CoachMarketingMachine.com. There's a really handy tip for running, automating marketing and selling with webinars and scaling up a coaching business every week. And if you want to check out a webinar and see one in action, then there's probably a link there as well. And there's probably some information there too, to some of Taki's weekend seminars, which I have been a part of, and I can tell you they're packed with value and well worth the effort if you want to get to them. You're running those still, Sydney and Los Angeles? Yeah, Sydney and the States. So we kind of move them around a little bit in the States. In the States we go kind of LA, San Francisco, and New York. Oh, nice. So, just kind of, I think for the rest of the year we're in Cali and back to New York early in the new year. Well worth the effort to get to one of those. Taki, as always, dropping value bombs for 2 days straight. Your head will explode by the end of it. But we have tissue paper to clean it up, and everyone looks okay. Absolutely. Looks okay. Flip charts from wall to wall by the time you're finished. That totally is. Love your work, Taki. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that gold with the listeners. And everybody, I would encourage you to get over to CoachMarketingMachine.com and check out all the rest of Taki's stuff. Cool, man. Thanks so much for the invite. Appreciate the chance to kind of talk about stuff that's kind of fun for both of us. Geeky, but awesome. Cool. Thanks, Taki. Pleasure, man. Wow, really fantastic episode there. I really want to thank Taki for coming on and dropping value bombs for the entire episode. I've got pages full of notes here, and if you're going to run webinars, you probably should too. But I'm going to get those transcribed. We're going to have them all up on the show notes, and that's going to be over at theactivemarketer.com/Taki, Taki. Again, that's theactivemarketer.com/Taki. So we'll see you next week for another episode. In the meantime, get out there and design, automate, and scale your business to the next level. See you, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Active Marketer Podcast. You can find the show notes and all the latest marketing automation news over at The Active Marketer.